I'm taking 70% of your millions, including your dad's estate. My name is Paul. I'm 32 years old and I run a construction equipment rental business in Phoenix, Arizona. Victoria said those words with a smirk that could cut glass, right there in the courtroom packed with lawyers and spectators. She thought she had me cornered. Thought 3 years of marriage entitled her to everything my father and I had built over decades. I sat quietly at the defendant's table while her attorney shuffled papers with the confidence of a man who believed he was about to collect the biggest payday of his career. Victoria wore that navy blue dress she saved for important occasions, the one she bought with my credit card 6 months ago. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she kept glancing at the gallery behind us where a few of her friends had shown up to watch what she called my victory lap. The thing was, I'd been feeling something was off for months now. Victoria had started asking more questions about my finances. Not the casual, how was work kind of questions, but specific ones about property values and investment accounts. She'd wanted to know about my dad's will when he passed 2 years ago, kept pressing me about whether everything was properly documented. When I inherited his $3.8 million estate, she suddenly became very interested in our legal status as a married couple. Her behavior had shifted in other ways, too. She stopped pretending to care about the business, rarely asked about my day, and spent most evenings on her phone texting people I didn't know. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd get defensive and say it was just friends. The credit card bills kept growing larger each month, filled with purchases from stores I'd never heard of and restaurants I'd never been to. But what really bothered me was how she'd started talking to other people about our marriage. Last month, I overheard her at a dinner party telling someone that she was finally going to get what she deserved. When I asked her about it later, she laughed it off and said she was talking about a promotion at work. Problem was, Victoria hadn't worked in 18 months. Judge Williams called the court to order, and Victoria's attorney began his opening statement about marital assets and fair distribution. Victoria nodded along like she was already spending the money. She kept shooting me looks that said she thought I was too soft to fight back, too naive to have protected myself. What she didn't know was that I'd learned something important from my father before he died. Trust is earned, but legal protection is built. And sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need protection from the most. I'd met Victoria 4 years ago at a business conference in Tucson. She worked in marketing for a tech company and had this way of making you feel like the most interesting person in the room. She was smart, beautiful, and seemed genuinely impressed by what I'd built with my father in the construction equipment business. We'd started with 2 bulldozers and a dream 30 years ago, and by the time I met Victoria, we were the largest equipment rental operation in the Southwest. Victoria moved in with me after 6 months. She was attentive, supportive, and seemed to understand the long hours that came with running a family business. When my father got sick, she was there through every hospital visit and every sleepless night. She held my hand at his funeral and told me she'd help me honor his legacy. But looking back, the warning signs were there early. Victoria had expensive tastes that didn't match her marketing salary. She always wanted to eat at the nicest restaurants, buy clothes from boutiques downtown, take weekend trips to expensive resorts. When I asked about her spending habits, she'd say she worked hard and deserved nice things. I didn't mind paying, I loved her, and I could afford it. The real shift happened after we got married 3 years ago. Victoria quit her job 6 months later, saying she wanted to focus on supporting my career. That support mostly involved spending my money and complaining when I worked late. She started talking about our assets and our future in ways that made me uncomfortable. When I mentioned keeping some business finances separate, she accused me of not trusting her. My father had always been protective of the family wealth. He'd made his money through careful planning and hard work, and he'd taught me to be smart about legal protections. When Victoria and I got engaged, he insisted we get a prenuptial agreement. "It's not about love, son," he'd said. "It's about protecting what we've built for the next generation." Victoria had resisted at first, claiming it showed I didn't trust her. But my father's attorney, William Chen, no, his name was William Garrett, had explained that prenups were standard practice for anyone with significant assets. Victoria eventually signed it, though she complained the whole time about how unromantic it was. She said she didn't even bother reading the whole thing because she trusted me. The prenup was comprehensive. It protected all premarital assets, inheritance money, and business holdings. Victoria would be entitled to half of any assets we acquired together during the marriage, but everything I'd built before we met, and everything I inherited from my father, would remain mine alone. I'd thought the prenup was just a formality, something to make my father feel better about his son's marriage. I never imagined I'd actually need it. But as Victoria's true intentions became clear over the past year, I realized my father had been wiser than I'd given him credit for. The moment everything crystallized was 3 weeks ago. I came home early from a job site and found Victoria on the phone in my home office, going through financial documents spread across my desk. She was reading numbers from my father's estate paperwork to whoever was on the other end of the call. Yes, $3.8 million in property and investments, she was saying, plus the business is valued at around $6 million. I'm telling you, this is going to be huge. When she saw me standing in the doorway, her face went white. She quickly hung up and started gathering the papers. Oh, hi, honey. I was just organizing some paperwork for you. Who were you talking to? Nobody important, just my sister. But Victoria's sister lived in Seattle and never called, and I'd never given Victoria permission to go through estate documents. Those papers were locked in my office safe, which meant she'd somehow gotten the combination. I didn't say anything that day, just nodded and walked away. But something inside me went cold and clear. Victoria wasn't organizing paperwork to help me. She was calculating how much she could take. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. Victoria made calls when she thought I couldn't hear. She'd started using terms like community property and marital assets in casual conversation. She'd even asked me about hiring a good divorce attorney under the guise of helping a friend. The final confirmation came when I checked our joint credit card statements. Victoria had charged several $1,000s to something called legal consultation services 2 months ago. When I called the number, it turned out to be a family law firm downtown. The receptionist confirmed that Victoria had been a client. My wife had been planning to divorce me and take half my fortune for at least 2 months. She'd been gathering financial information, consulting lawyers, and calculating her payout, all while sleeping in my bed and spending my money. I sat in my truck outside the equipment yard that night for over an hour, watching the sunset paint the mountains orange. I wasn't angry exactly. I was disappointed. Disappointed that someone I'd loved and trusted had reduced our marriage to a business transaction. Disappointed that my father's warnings about protecting family wealth had turned out to be necessary. But underneath the disappointment was something else. Relief. Relief that I'd listened to my father. Relief that I'd protected what 3 generations of my family had built. Relief that Victoria's greed would ultimately be her downfall. I pulled out my phone and called William Garrett, the attorney who'd drafted our prenuptial agreement. Bill, it's Paul. I need you to review that prenup you wrote for Victoria and me. I think I'm going to need it. The legal machinery was already in motion. Victoria just didn't know it yet. Soon she'd learn the difference between what she wanted and what she was legally entitled to. And the lesson would cost her everything. Victoria filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning. I was at the yard checking inventory when William Garrett called me with the news. Her attorney had submitted paperwork demanding 50% of all marital assets, including my inheritance and the family business. They were claiming that everything acquired during our marriage should be considered community property. They're asking for nearly $5 million, Bill told me over the phone, plus half the business and spousal support. I wasn't surprised, but seeing the numbers in black and white still hit different. Victoria had calculated everything down to the penny. She'd even included the value of equipment I'd purchased after we got married, claiming it was bought with marital funds and therefore subject to division. When I got home that evening, Victoria was packing her clothes into suitcases. She'd already moved out most of her jewelry and personal items. The house felt hollow, like someone had sucked all the warmth out of it. I suppose you got the papers, she said without looking up from folding her designer dresses. I did. Good. Then you know this doesn't have to be ugly, Paul. Give me what I'm entitled to, and we can both move on with our lives. The way she said entitled made my jaw clench, like my father's life's work was something she deserved just for sleeping in my bed for 3 years. We'll let the lawyers figure out what you're entitled to, I said. Victoria finally looked at me then, and her expression was pure calculation. You can fight this if you want, but my attorney says I have an excellent case. 3 years of marriage, community property state, significant assets acquired during the marriage. The math is pretty simple. She was trying to intimidate me, trying to make me think that fighting would be expensive and futile. Her lawyer had probably told her that most men in my situation would settle rather than go through a lengthy court battle. Is that what your attorney told you when you paid him $3,000 2 months ago? Victoria's hands stopped moving. She'd been folding a blue sweater, and now she just stood there holding it. I don't know what you're talking about. Legal consultation services, charged to our joint account in July. Did you think I wouldn't notice? For the first time since I'd known her, Victoria looked genuinely rattled. I was exploring my options. Any smart woman would do the same. Any smart woman would also read her prenuptial agreement before hiring a lawyer. Victoria's face went pale. What prenuptial agreement? I almost laughed. Almost. The one you signed 3 years ago. The one my father's attorney drafted. The one you said you didn't bother reading because you trusted me. That thing? Paul, you can't be serious. Nobody enforces those anymore. They're just scare tactics. But I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. She was starting to remember sitting in William Garrett's office, signing papers while complaining about how unromantic the whole process was. She was starting to wonder what exactly those papers had said. We'll see what the judge thinks, I said. Victoria left that night, and I didn't hear from her again until the court date. But through Bill, I learned that her attorney had requested copies of all our prenuptial documents. Apparently, Victoria really hadn't kept a copy for herself. She'd signed a legally binding agreement affecting millions of dollars, and then forgotten about it entirely. The funny thing was, Victoria could have avoided all this if she'd just been honest with me. If she'd come to me and said she wanted a divorce, we could have worked something out quietly. I might have even given her more than she was legally entitled to, just to avoid the drama. But Victoria had chosen to be sneaky. She'd chosen to treat our marriage like a heist. She'd calculated and schemed and planned to take everything I had without even knowing what legal protections existed. Now she was about to find out, and the education was going to cost her everything she thought she'd gained. 3 weeks before our court date, William Garrett called me with news that made the whole situation even more twisted than I'd realized. Paul, you need to hear this. I've been doing some digging into Victoria's activities, and it's worse than we thought. I was in my office at the equipment yard watching the sunset through my window. How much worse? She's been planning this for over a year. I found records showing she consulted with 3 different attorneys before filing. She even hired a private investigator to look into your business finances. That hit me like a punch to the gut. A private investigator? Fellow named James Murphy. He specializes in asset discovery for divorce cases. Victoria paid him $8,000 to research your holdings, your father's estate, even your business partnerships. She has detailed reports on everything you own. I set down my coffee mug carefully, trying to process what Bill was telling me. Victoria hadn't just been casually planning a divorce. She'd been conducting military-level reconnaissance on my financial life. There's more, Bill continued. Murphy's report includes recommendations on how to maximize her settlement. He suggested she could claim the business appreciated significantly during your marriage due to her emotional and domestic support. She was going to argue that her being a stay-at-home wife somehow increased the company's value. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Victoria had quit her job against my advice, spent most of her time shopping and lunching with friends, and now she was going to claim that her lifestyle had somehow contributed to my business success. Did she find anything that could hurt us? I asked. That's the beautiful part. Murphy's investigation actually helps our case. He documented that all your major assets were acquired before the marriage or through inheritance. His own report proves that Victoria has no legal claim to most of your wealth. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. So she paid $8,000 for a report that destroys her own case? Essentially, yes. But here's what really gets me, Paul. I found out who recommended Murphy to her. Who? Your neighbor, Stephen Davis. Turns out he went through a nasty divorce 3 years ago and hired Murphy for his case. Victoria had been talking to Stephen about divorce strategies for months. Stephen Davis lived 2 houses down from me. I'd loaned him my trailer twice when he was moving furniture. His wife had left him and taken half his construction business. I'd felt sorry for the guy, even invited him over for dinner a few times when Victoria suggested he looked lonely. Stephen's been coaching her, Bill continued. According to Murphy's notes, Stephen told Victoria that she needed to document everything, build a case for why she deserved more than the standard 50%. He told her that judges are sympathetic to wives who sacrifice their careers for their husbands. The betrayal cut deeper than Victoria's scheming. Stephen had sat at my dinner table, eaten my food, accepted my help, and then turned around and advised my wife on how to destroy me financially. He'd shared his divorce strategy with her, recommended his private investigator, probably even helped her find her attorney. "There's one more thing," Bill said quietly. "Murphy's report includes a psychological profile. Victoria told him that you were emotionally weak and would likely settle rather than fight. She said you were too nice to put up a real legal battle." I stared out at the equipment yard, watching one of my drivers secure a bulldozer onto a trailer. 3 generations of my family had built this business through hard work and careful planning, and Victoria thought I was too weak to protect it. "Bill," I said, "I want you to prepare the most comprehensive defense you've ever written. I want Victoria to understand exactly how wrong she was about me." "With pleasure, Paul. This is going to be fun." The week before our court date, I put my plan into action. William Garrett had assembled everything we needed to destroy Victoria's case, but I wanted to make sure the lesson stuck. First, I had Murphy's investigative report officially entered as evidence. Since Victoria had hired him, anything he'd discovered was fair game for our defense. The irony was perfect. Her $8,000 fishing expedition had become my smoking gun. "This is beautiful work," Bill said as we reviewed the documents in his office. Murphy's report proves that Victoria was planning a premeditated financial attack. No judge likes to see that kind of calculation in a divorce case. But the Murphy report was just the beginning. I'd also had Bill subpoena Victoria's financial records for the past 2 years. What we found was a pattern of increasingly reckless spending that started right after my father died, and I inherited his estate. Victoria had charged over $60,000 to our joint credit cards in the past 18 months. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, weekend trips with friends to places like Scottsdale and San Diego. She'd even booked a 10-day vacation to Cabo that she'd told me was a girls' trip, but had actually charged to my business account. "She was treating your inheritance like her personal shopping fund," Bill observed, "and now she wants to claim half of it legally." The spending pattern told a clear story. Victoria had seen my father's death not as a tragedy, but as a financial opportunity. She'd immediately started living larger, spending more, acting like someone who'd already won the lottery. The inheritance money wasn't even fully processed before she was burning through it. Then I found the text messages. Victoria had forgotten to remove her iCloud account from our shared computer. Every text she'd sent and received for the past 6 months was automatically backing up to my system. What I discovered made my blood run cold. She'd been texting with Stephen Davis regularly, sharing details about my business and asking for advice on divorce strategy. But worse than that, she'd been texting with her attorney about how to hide her own spending from the court. "Can we claim the credit card charges were for household expenses?" she'd texted her lawyer. "We'll argue that maintaining the lifestyle was expected in your social circle," he'd replied. Victoria and her attorney had been plotting to present her shopping sprees as legitimate household expenses. They were going to claim that buying designer purses and taking expensive vacations was somehow necessary for maintaining our marriage. The final piece of evidence was almost too perfect. Victoria had texted her friend Diana about the divorce case just 3 days ago. "Paul has no idea what's coming. He's always been too trusting. By the time this is over, I'll never have to work again." Bill leaned back in his chair when I showed him the messages. "Paul, this is prosecutorial misconduct if I've ever seen it. Victoria's attorney has been coaching her to hide assets and misrepresent expenses. The state bar is going to want to see these. But I wasn't interested in destroying Victoria's lawyer. I just wanted justice. What are the chances she'll try to settle when she sees what we have? I asked. 0, Bill said with confidence. Victoria's ego won't let her back down now. She's convinced herself that she deserves your money, and she's not going to accept anything less than what she thinks she's owed. Good, I said. Because I want her to hear it from the judge. I want her to understand exactly what she signed 3 years ago, and exactly what it's going to cost her. The court date was set for Monday morning. Victoria had no idea what was waiting for her. The courtroom was packed when Judge Williams called our case. Victoria sat at the plaintiff's table in her navy blue dress, confidence radiating from every pore. Her attorney had a stack of papers and that hungry look lawyers get when they smell a big payday. I'm taking 70% of your millions, including your dad's estate, Victoria announced to the courtroom during her attorney's opening statement. She'd clearly decided to go bigger than her original demand, probably thinking I'd be too intimidated to fight back. The gallery behind us murmured approval. Victoria's friends had shown up to watch her big moment, and they were eating it up. Stephen Davis was there too, sitting in the back row with a smug expression that made me want to punch him. Judge Williams listened patiently while Victoria's attorney explained why she deserved the majority of my wealth. He talked about her sacrifices, her support, her contribution to my success. He painted a picture of a devoted wife who'd given up everything for love and now deserved to be compensated for her devotion. When it was my turn, I stood up slowly and walked to the judge's bench. I carried a manila folder containing 2 documents, the prenuptial agreement and a summary of Victoria's own investigative report. Your Honor, I said quietly, I'd like to present these documents for your review. Judge Williams took the folder and opened it. His eyebrows went up as he read the first page of the prenuptial agreement. Then he started reading Murphy's report, and I watched his expression change from curiosity to disbelief to something that looked almost like amusement. Victoria was watching nervously now. She kept glancing at her attorney, who was clearly wondering what documents I'd just handed the judge. Judge Williams finished reading and looked up at me. Mr. Blake, is this private investigator's report accurate? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Blake hired Mr. Murphy to investigate my assets for the purpose of this divorce action. The judge looked at Victoria, then at her attorney, then back at the documents. And then something beautiful happened. Judge Williams started laughing. Judge Williams composed himself and addressed Victoria directly. Mrs. Blake, according to this prenuptial agreement that you signed, you waive all claims to Mr. Blake's premarital assets and inherited property. Did you read this document before signing it? Victoria's face had gone white. Your Honor, that agreement was coercive. I was pressured into signing. By whom? By his father and his attorney. They said I had to sign it, or the wedding would be called off. Judge Williams looked at the prenup again. I see here that you had independent legal counsel review this agreement. You were represented by attorney Michael Foster. Did he not explain the terms to you? I don't remember. You don't remember having your own lawyer explain a document that affected millions of dollars? Victoria's attorney stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to challenge the validity of this prenuptial agreement. On what grounds? Unconscionability. The terms are grossly unfair to my client. Judge Williams set the documents down and looked at Victoria with something approaching disgust. Mrs. Blake, you hired a private investigator to document your husband's assets so you could claim them in divorce proceedings. You spent $60,000 on personal luxuries while planning to divorce him. You consulted with multiple attorneys to maximize your settlement, and now you want this court to invalidate a legal agreement because you didn't bother to read it? The courtroom was dead silent. Victoria's friends had stopped whispering. Stephen Davis was staring at his shoes. The prenuptial agreement is valid and enforceable, Judge Williams declared. Mrs. Blake is entitled to half of any assets acquired during the marriage, minus the debts she incurred. Based on the evidence presented, that amounts to approximately negative $15,000. Victoria made a sound like she'd been punched. Court is adjourned. Victoria faced complete financial devastation when the prenuptial agreement left her responsible for all the credit card debt she'd accumulated while receiving no share of the assets she'd counted on. She was forced to declare bankruptcy within 6 months, and her attempts to find employment failed when potential employers discovered her reputation for pursuing relationships for financial gain rather than genuine affection. Her social circle abandoned her when the court proceedings revealed the calculated nature of her marriage scheme, and Stephen Davis moved away quietly after his role in coaching her became public knowledge. Her dating prospects disappeared entirely when word spread through Phoenix social circles about her failed attempt to manipulate the legal system for personal enrichment. I used a portion of my protected inheritance to help others by providing legal education about asset protection for small business owners, finding peace in the knowledge that my father's wisdom had not only saved our family legacy, but could help others protect theirs as well. Sometimes the people who mistake your kindness for weakness teach you the most valuable lessons about the difference between love and calculation. The best gift would be if you disappeared from our family. My name is Stuart. I'm 57 and I run a small plumbing supply business in Charlotte, North Carolina. Kevin said those words to me the day before my daughter's wedding, not during an argument, not in the heat of anger, just cold matter of fact like he was ordering coffee. I stood in the hotel lobby where the rehearsal dinner had just ended. My daughter Sophia was upstairs probably calling her bridesmaids about last-minute details. Kevin had cornered me by the elevators, away from everyone else. I'm serious, Stuart, he continued. Sophia and I would be better off without your constant interference. I'd been paying for their wedding for 8 months, $85,000 so far. The venue, catering, flowers, photography, band, honeymoon. Kevin knew this. He'd been there when I signed every check. Interference? I kept my voice level. You act like you own us because you throw money around. We don't need your charity. That stung because it wasn't charity. It was love. But Kevin saw everything as a transaction, a power play. He'd been like this since the engagement, treating me like an ATM with opinions. Maybe you're right, I said. Something in my tone made him pause. He'd expected me to argue, to defend myself, to promise I'd back off. Instead, I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Granting your wish. I scrolled through my contacts. You want me gone? Fine. But when I disappear, everything I brought disappears with me. Kevin's face changed. For the first time in months, he looked uncertain. What do you mean? I hit the first number. The wedding coordinator picked up on the second ring. Jennifer, this is Stuart Patterson. I need to cancel all services for tomorrow's wedding. Yes, all of them. Effective immediately. Kevin grabbed my arm. Wait. What are you doing? I shrugged him off and kept dialing. The caterer was next. Then the florist. Kevin stood there, mouth open, as I systematically destroyed 8 months of planning in 10 minutes. You said you'd be better off without me, I reminded him. Let's find out. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and turned to face him. He looked pale, finally understanding what he'd just lost. Not just me. Everything. The honeymoon's paid through Sunday, I said as the doors closed. After that, you're on your own. I went back to my room and started packing. By morning, I'd be gone, just like Kevin wanted. I'd been planning this wedding since Sophia got engaged 14 months ago. My late wife Caroline would have loved seeing our daughter in white, walking down the aisle of St. Peter's Cathedral. Caroline died 3 years ago, cancer, and I'd thrown myself into work afterward. The business kept me busy, but Sophia kept me human. When she brought Kevin home 2 years ago, I tried to like him. He was polite enough at first, worked in marketing for some tech company, dressed well, said the right things. But there were small moments that bothered me. The way he ordered for Sophia at restaurants without asking what she wanted. How he'd check his phone during conversations. The casual dismissiveness when she'd mention her childhood memories or stories about her mother. I figured every father thinks no man is good enough for his daughter. The warning signs got clearer after the engagement. Kevin started treating family dinners like board meetings, always steering conversations toward his work achievements or future plans. When Sophia mentioned wanting a traditional Catholic ceremony, Kevin rolled his eyes and said they'd keep it simple. She looked hurt, but didn't argue. That's when I stepped in with the wedding funding. I told them I wanted to give them the celebration Caroline would have planned. Sophia cried and hugged me. Kevin shook my hand and said all the right words, but his smile never reached his eyes. Over the months, the pattern became clear. Kevin would complain to Sophia about my meddling whenever I had opinions about vendors or arrangements, but he never complained when I wrote the checks. He'd even started suggesting upgrades. Better wine for the reception, a more expensive band, first-class honeymoon flights. Meanwhile, he'd grown bolder about disrespecting me directly. Last month, when I questioned the cost of his bachelor party weekend in Miami, he'd said, "If you can't afford it, just say so." I'd paid for that too. $4,000 for him and his friends to drink and gamble for 3 days. Sophia didn't see it. She was caught up in wedding planning, work stress, and trying to keep everyone happy. When I tried to hint that Kevin seemed ungrateful, she'd defend him. "He's just stressed, Dad. The wedding planning is overwhelming." But it wasn't overwhelming for him. He wasn't planning anything. He'd show up to vendor meetings, agree with whatever Sophia and I had decided, then complain later about details he hadn't bothered to engage with. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I'd overheard him on the phone with someone, probably his best man. "After tomorrow, I won't have to pretend to like the old man anymore," he'd said. "Sophia feels guilty about her mom, so she lets him play wedding planner, whatever keeps him busy." That's when I knew Kevin had to go. I just didn't know he'd make it so easy for me. I sat in my hotel room that night staring at my phone. 11 missed calls from Kevin, 7 from Sophia. I'd turned off the ringer after the third one. The voicemails told the story. First, Kevin panicked. "Stuart, we need to talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Then Sophia, confused. "Dad, Kevin says you canceled the wedding? That can't be right. Call me back." Then Kevin again, angry now. "This is insane. You can't just destroy your daughter's wedding because you're having some kind of breakdown." Finally, Sophia crying, "Daddy, please, I don't know what happened between you and Kevin, but we can fix it. This is my wedding day. Please don't do this to me." That last message nearly broke me, but I'd been breaking for months watching Kevin treat my generosity like his birthright, while dismissing me like hired help. Sophia deserved better than a man who saw her family as obstacles to manage. I called her back at midnight. "Dad, oh thank God. Kevin says you canceled everything. Tell me that's not true." "It's true, sweetheart." Silence. Then, "Why? What happened?" "Your fiancé told me the best gift I could give your family would be to disappear. So I did. And I took my gifts with me." He didn't mean it like that. He was probably just stressed. He meant it exactly like that. He's been meaning it for months. I could hear Kevin in the background, hissing instructions, probably telling her what to say to get me to restore the funding. "Dad, even if Kevin said something thoughtless, this is my wedding. You're punishing me for his mistake." "No, honey. I'm protecting you from a man who thinks your father is disposable as long as his money isn't. That's not who he is. It's exactly who he is. And if you marry him tomorrow, you'll spend the next 10 years learning that the hard way." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "So what happens now?" "Now you decide if you want to marry someone who can't afford the wedding he planned, or if you want to postpone until you find someone who values what you value." "The church is paid through next month," I added. "If you want a small ceremony with people who actually love you, I'll gladly pay for that. But I won't finance another day of Kevin treating your family like we're lucky to be tolerated." "I need to think." "That's all I wanted, sweetheart. For you to think." I hung up and started loading my truck. By dawn, I'd be at my cabin in the mountains, 3 hours away. Kevin had wanted me gone. Now he could explain to 200 wedding guests why the groom's attitude problem had canceled the bride's dream day. Some lessons cost more than others. I woke up at 5 a.m. to 37 missed calls. The wedding was scheduled for 2 p.m. By now, vendors would be arriving at the venue to find locked doors and canceled contracts. My phone buzzed. Sophia. Dad, I'm at the church. Father Mitchell says you canceled the ceremony. The florist just left. She says you told her not to deliver the arrangements. That's right. The caterer is threatening to sue us for the deposit. Kevin's parents are driving here from Tennessee. My bridesmaids are in their hotel rooms crying. I felt sick, but I'd committed to this path. What does Kevin have to say? He's making calls, trying to fix this. He thinks maybe we can pay the vendors directly, get them to come back. With what money? Silence. Then quietly. He's trying to get a loan. Kevin had finally hit the wall. He was about to learn what his dream wedding actually cost when someone else wasn't paying for it. Sophia, I need you to understand something. I didn't cancel your wedding to hurt you. I canceled Kevin's wedding to save you. What's the difference? A wedding is about two families joining together. Kevin made it clear my family wasn't welcome. So I took my family and my money and left. But you're my family too. Exactly. And Kevin asked me to disappear from it. My phone beeped with another call. Kevin. I need to go, sweetheart. But I want you to pay attention to what Kevin does next. When someone shows you who they are under pressure, believe them. I switched to Kevin's call. Stuart, you've made your point. Now fix this. Fix what? Don't play games. You know exactly what you did. I know exactly what you asked for. I disappeared. Just like you wanted. I didn't mean literally cancel the wedding, you psycho. There it was. The real Kevin, no more politeness. Then what did you mean? I meant stop trying to control everything. Stop acting like you're the father of the bride. I am the father of the bride. You're not paying for the wedding anymore, so you don't get a say. I had to laugh. Kevin, I've been paying for this wedding for 8 months. The venue, the food, the flowers, the band, the photographer, your honeymoon, your bachelor party. Every single thing. And you think I stopped paying because I don't get a say anymore? Silence. You stopped paying because you're having some kind of mental breakdown. Sophia thinks so too. Put her on the phone. She's busy trying to save her wedding day from your tantrum. Then she's busy trying to save Kevin's wedding day, because without my money, there is no wedding. I could hear him breathing hard. Finally, what do you want? I want you to prove you can afford the life you're asking my daughter to share with you. The wedding bill is $85,000. Wire it to the vendors, and I'll call them back to restore services. I don't have $85,000. Then you don't have a wedding. This is insane. This is reality. You wanted to get married without my interference? Great. Get married without my money. Sophia will never forgive you for this. Maybe not. But she'll thank me eventually for showing her what kind of man she almost married. I hung up and turned off my phone. I needed coffee and quiet to think. Kevin was about to get desperate, and desperate people make revealing choices. The mountain air was crisp and clean. I sat on my cabin's porch, watching the sunrise over the ridge. For the first time in months, I felt peaceful. No phone calls about wedding details. No tension about Kevin's latest dismissive comment. No walking on eggshells around my own daughter. Kevin had given me a gift, in his way. He'd shown his true face early enough for Sophia to see it. Now we'd find out if she was looking. I turned my phone back on at 10 a.m. 43 missed calls, 26 voicemails, and 62 text messages. The first voicemail was from Jennifer, the wedding coordinator, panicking about vendors showing up to a canceled event. The second was from Kevin's mother asking if I'd lost my mind. The third was from my brother-in-law, Tony, who'd driven down from Virginia with his wife for the wedding. Stuart, what the hell is going on? Kevin called me ranting about you sabotaging the wedding. Says you went crazy and canceled everything out of spite. That doesn't sound like you, but I need to know what's happening before I drive home. I called Tony back first. He'd been Caroline's brother, knew me for 20 years. Tony, it's Stuart. Jesus, finally. What's this about canceling the wedding? Kevin made you sound like you'd snapped. Did he mention why I canceled it? He said you two had an argument about wedding details and you overreacted. He told me the best gift I could give his family would be to disappear. Then he acted surprised when I took him at his word. Silence. Tony had never liked Kevin much either. He said that? Night before last, right after the rehearsal dinner. Cold as ice. And you've been paying for this wedding? Every penny. 85 grand so far. Son of a bitch. Tony got it immediately. That's what I'd hoped. Where's Sophia in all this? Trying to save her wedding day. Kevin's got her believing I had some kind of breakdown. What do you need me to do? Just be there for her when reality hits. This isn't going to end well for Kevin. After Tony, I called Jennifer, the wedding coordinator. Mr. Patterson, thank goodness. This is a disaster. The vendors are furious, the guests are arriving in 3 hours, and the groom is trying to wire money from 3 different bank accounts that don't have enough funds. Kevin's trying to pay the vendors. He's trying, but the amounts aren't working. The catering bill alone is $28,000. He's got maybe $6,000 in his checking account. So Kevin was learning what his champagne dreams cost when someone else wasn't buying. What about credit cards? He's maxed out. I think he's calling family members now trying to borrow money. Perfect. Nothing like financial desperation to reveal character. Jennifer, I want you to know this isn't your fault. I canceled because the groom specifically asked me to remove myself from their family. I'm simply honoring his request. But the bride is about to learn something important about the man she's planning to marry. Let Kevin try to solve this himself. My next call was from an unknown number, Kevin's father. Mr. Patterson, this is Dale Bryant, Kevin's dad. My son called me about some kind of misunderstanding with the wedding payments. What did he tell you? He said you canceled the wedding services over some argument, and now he needs help covering the cost to get them restored. How much help does he need? He's asking for $60,000. I whistled. That's a lot of money to wire on 3 hours' notice. It is. That's why I'm calling you. Kevin says you can fix this with a phone call, but you're being stubborn about some family dispute. Mr. Bryant, your son asked me to disappear from his family. I'm a man of my word. Pause. He asked you to what? Disappear. Said it would be the best gift I could give them. Longer pause. And you'd been paying for the wedding? Every expense. Your son knew that when he made his request. Jesus Christ. Indeed. So now he's learning what it cost to get married without the father-in-law he wanted gone. Dale Bryant hung up without another word. By noon, the situation had escalated beautifully. Kevin's attempts to fund the wedding had failed spectacularly. His credit was maxed. His parents couldn't wire $60,000 on short notice, and his friends from the bachelor party had mysteriously become unreachable. Sophia called at 12:30 p.m., 2.5 hours before the ceremony. Dad, I need you to tell me the truth about something. Always. Kevin says you canceled the wedding because you wanted control over our marriage. Is that true? No, sweetheart. I canceled the wedding because Kevin told me to disappear from your family. He says he never said that. Of course he did. Sophia, I recorded our conversation. Silence. I hadn't actually recorded it, but Kevin's denial told me everything I needed to know about his character. You recorded him? I've learned to protect myself when dealing with people who rewrite history to suit their needs. Can I hear it? This was the moment. Kevin had forced me to choose between my daughter's immediate happiness and her long-term well-being. I'd chosen her future. Meet me at Murphy's Diner on Independence Boulevard in 30 minutes. Come alone. The wedding's in 2 hours. Sweetheart, there is no wedding. Kevin can't afford it, and I won't fund it. But I need you to understand why. Murphy's Diner was halfway between Charlotte and my cabin. I got there first and took a corner booth where we could talk privately. Sophia arrived 20 minutes later, still in her robe, hair in curlers. She looked exhausted. Dad, I need you to fix this. I can't fix this, honey. Kevin broke it. By saying something thoughtless when he was stressed? By showing me exactly how he sees our family, as obstacles to manage until he gets what he wants. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. I'd been tracking Kevin's behavior for months without realizing it. Look at this. I showed her my records, every payment I'd made, every time Kevin had complained about my involvement, every dismissive comment, every demand for upgrades he couldn't afford. This is what $85,000 of gratitude looks like, Sophia. Your fiancé took my money for 8 months while resenting my existence. She scrolled through the notes, her face growing paler. I didn't know you'd been keeping track. I wasn't keeping track. I was trying to understand why the man my daughter loved seemed to hate her father. He doesn't hate you. Then why did he ask me to disappear? She didn't answer. She was still reading my notes. The bachelor party was $4,000, she said finally, plus flights and hotels. Kevin told his friends I was paying, then acted like I was being controlling when I questioned the cost. He told me you offered to pay for it. I offered to pay for a reasonable celebration. Kevin upgraded it to a luxury weekend and presented me with the bill. Sophia put down my phone and looked at me with Caroline's eyes. What do you want me to do? I want you to postpone the wedding until you're sure you're marrying someone who respects your family. All those people are here. They traveled from all over the country. They'll understand when they learn why. What if Kevin apologizes? Sophia, he's been lying to you for the past 12 hours about what he said to me. Does that sound like someone who's sorry? She started crying, not the gentle tears of a bride overwhelmed by emotion, but the harsh sobs of a woman realizing she'd made a terrible mistake. At 2 p.m., St. Peter's Cathedral should have been filled with 200 guests watching my daughter marry the wrong man. Instead, it was chaos. I drove by on my way out of town. Cars were pulling away from the parking lot. Wedding guests in their best clothes stood in confused clusters on the sidewalk, checking their phones, calling each other. Kevin stood at the church entrance in his tuxedo, gesturing frantically at anyone who would listen. His parents flanked him, looking mortified. His groomsmen had scattered. I parked across the street and watched the final act. Father Mitchell emerged from the church, still in his ceremonial robes, and spoke briefly with Kevin. Kevin's shoulders sagged. Without the payments, there would be no ceremony. The church doors closed. That's when Kevin spotted my truck. He ran across the street, wedding shoes slipping on the asphalt. "You son of a bitch!" He pounded on my window. "You destroyed my wedding." I rolled it down halfway. "Your wedding? I thought you could afford your own wedding, Kevin. Isn't that what you told your groomsmen?" His face went white. Someone had talked. I never said that. Brandon did. Called me this morning, asking why I'd really canceled. Seems you told your bachelor party that after the wedding you'd never have to pretend to like me again. Kevin's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You also told them Sophia felt guilty about her mother's death, so she let me play wedding planner to keep me busy. Your words." "That's not... I didn't mean..." "You meant every word. The only thing you didn't mean was getting caught." Wedding guests were gathering, watching this public meltdown. Kevin's humiliation was complete. "Where's Sophia?" "Somewhere safe, thinking about what kind of man asks his future father-in-law to disappear while spending his money." I started my engine. Kevin grabbed the door handle. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Sophia called off the engagement an hour ago." His face crumpled. "What?" "Turns out she didn't want to marry someone who lies to her about her family." I drove away, leaving Kevin standing in the street in his wedding tuxedo, surrounded by confused guests and canceled dreams. 6 months later, I got a letter from Sophia. She was living in Charleston, working for an art gallery, dating a teacher named Michael who'd known her in college. She'd enclosed a photo of them at a coffee shop, both laughing at something off camera. "Dad," the letter read, "I owe you an apology and a thank you. The apology for not seeing what you saw. The thank you for loving me enough to lose me temporarily, to save me permanently." She was coming home for Christmas. Michael wanted to meet me. I told him the story of my wedding day. He said any man who'd ask you to disappear doesn't deserve to join our family. I think you'll like him. The letter included newspaper clipping from Charlotte. Kevin had been arrested for check fraud, trying to pay for a new apartment with a rubber check. His marketing job was gone. His parents had cut off contact after learning about his treatment of me. Apparently, he told several people you'd had a mental breakdown and canceled the wedding out of spite, Sophia wrote. When the truth came out, he lost most of his friends too. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, next to Caroline's engagement ring. Someday, when Sophia found the right man, she'd wear it again. That afternoon, I got a call from a young plumber named James who wanted to buy my business. He had 3 kids, knew the trade, and treated his customers like family. We met for coffee, and I liked him immediately. Maybe it was time for new beginnings all around. Kevin's demand that I disappear had given me exactly what I needed: the clarity to see what mattered and the courage to protect it. Kevin and his family faced lasting consequences for their behavior. His parents endured social embarrassment when their friends learned the full story of the canceled wedding, leading to their estrangement from their son. Kevin's professional reputation suffered when word spread about his fraudulent check incident and his treatment of his future father-in-law, making him unemployable in Charlotte's tight-knit business community. His social circle collapsed when former friends realized he had manipulated them with lies about Stuart's supposed mental breakdown, leaving him isolated and bitter. The wedding deposits he couldn't recover left him in debt, while his attempts to rebuild his life in other cities were hampered by background checks that revealed his fraud arrest. Sometimes the best gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are before it's too late to walk away.